There's a certain lie at the center of The Sopranos that only works because everyone agrees to perform it. The men perform it with violence dressed up as business. They call it work, they call it tradition, they call it rules. They talk about respect, like it's a currency you can stack and spend. They pretend it's organized, controlled, almost professional, as if the blood never splashes onto the suit. And the women, the mob wives, perform the other half of the lie, the one that makes the first lie livable. Because if the men are the engine, the wives are the insulation. They keep the heat contained so the whole house doesn't burn down. They turn a criminal life into something that can pass, at a glance, as a normal American family with a bigger house and nicer jewelry. They manage the social world. They build the cover story. They raise the kids. They host the dinners. They put on the face that says nothing is wrong here, we are fine, everything is earned, everything is safe. But what makes them fascinating isn't that they are fooled. It's that they're not really. The Sopranos never treats mob wives as clueless props. It treats them like adults making choices inside a rigged game. They don't have the same power as the men, but they have agency. They see enough to understand what this world is. They also see what it buys them. And most importantly, they understand what happens if they stop playing their part. So when you look at Carmela, Adriana, and Rosalie April, you're not just looking at 3 women attached to mob guys. You're looking at 3 different survival strategies, 3 different ways to live next to violence without letting it swallow your whole identity, 3 different relationships with denial, complicity, and desire. And the question isn't simply how much do they know. The real question is, what do they do with what they know? Because in that world, knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is a weight. It's something you carry quietly while you smile at a fundraiser. Carmela is the clearest example of what a boss's wife is supposed to be, not just in the mob world but in the suburban performance of it. She's the woman who can stand in a beautiful kitchen, in a beautiful house, and make it look like the American dream came true for them through hard work and good taste. Her role is part spouse, part manager, part public relations, part moral shield. Carmela handles the home like it's a small kingdom. She curates everything, the furniture, the parties, the church ties, the friendships. She knows which people matter, which relationships maintain their status, which social spaces keep them insulated from questions. When people come over, the house doesn't just say wealth. It says stability. It says family. It says legitimacy. That's not accidental. That's the job. And because it's her job, Carmela is not naive about where the money comes from. She's selective. That's different. She chooses what to look at and what to look away from, but the choice itself is the giveaway. You don't build that kind of selective blindness unless you're aware that there's something you're refusing to see. Carmela knows the language of the life even when she pretends she doesn't. She understands why certain people can't be mentioned. She understands the meaning of sudden cash, sudden gifts, sudden favors. She understands why some wives act nervous at certain moments and why other wives go stiff and polite when a topic gets too close to reality. She also understands the deeper truth that the men pretend isn't there. This lifestyle runs on fear. Not just fear of cops or rivals, but fear inside the family. Fear that if you challenge the wrong thing, you'll invite consequences you don't want to imagine. Carmela doesn't fear Tony like she fears a random violent man, but she knows what Tony is capable of in general. She has watched people orbit him and then vanish. She has seen the emotional coldness that comes out when he's cornered. She knows the mood shifts, the danger signs, the way the air changes when business is bad. So how informed is she? She's informed enough. Not on details, not always on specific acts, but on the shape of it. She knows this money is stained. She knows violence is the foundation. She knows that the work Tony does is not a normal job with normal consequences. And she knows that the comfortable life she protects is paid for with things she can't admit out loud. So why does she choose it? Because Carmela isn't only trapped. Carmela also wants it. That's the uncomfortable truth The Sopranos keeps returning to. Carmela has genuine moral conflict and she has genuine pain, but she also has taste. She wants security. She wants status. She wants the respect she gets from being the boss's wife. She wants her children to have access to a world of opportunity that her background might not have given them otherwise. She wants to feel like she climbed into something bigger than a small life, and she is good at it. Carmela can walk into a room and command attention without raising her voice. She can make you feel her judgment with a look. She can play sweet, play proper, play religious, play classy. She knows how to win social battles without getting her hands dirty. That matters in their world because a boss's image isn't only built by his threats. It's built by his household looking untouchable. Carmela's image, the one she wants to project, is very specific. She wants to be seen as a good wife, a good mother, a respectable woman, a woman of faith. She wants the benefits of the life without the label of what the life truly is. She wants people to envy her without suspecting her. She wants to be above the ugliness, even as she lives off it. And this is where Carmela becomes one of the most honest characters in the show, because she doesn't simply lie to others. She lies to herself in a way that takes effort. Carmela's relationship to morality is constantly being negotiated like a business deal. She'll feel guilt, then she'll redirect it, she'll feel disgust, then she'll focus on the kids. She'll get angry about Tony's cheating, then she'll remember what leaving would mean financially. She'll lean into religion, then she'll use religion as cover rather than transformation. It's not that she never tries to be better, it's that every attempt hits the same wall. The wall is comfort. Carmela wants to be clean while staying rich. She wants the luxury of a conscience without paying the price for it, and when she tries to find a way out that doesn't involve losing everything, that's where you see her real intelligence. She starts chasing legitimacy not as a moral act, but as an investment. She wants a version of wealth she can point to and say, I built this is mine, this is real. The spec house isn't just a project, it's a psychological escape hatch. If she can create something legitimate, then maybe she can rewrite the story of her life. Maybe she can tell herself she wasn't just a beneficiary of violence, she was a builder, a businesswoman, a respectable person. But even that is haunted by the source. The connections, the leverage, the money. It all leads back to Tony. There's no clean break, there's just cleaner packaging. So how happy is Carmela with her decision? Carmela is rarely happy in a pure sense. She's satisfied at times, comfortable, proud of her home, proud of her kids when they succeed, pleased when she wins a social contest. But real happiness is harder, because happiness would require internal peace, and Carmela never fully has it. Her life is a constant bargain between comfort and self-respect, and she keeps choosing comfort, then punishing herself for it, then choosing comfort again. That cycle is her prison. And it's also her power, because Carmela's ability to live with contradiction is exactly what makes her effective in the role. She can host a perfect dinner while her mind is chewing on something dark. She can smile while she resents, she can pray while she bargains. Carmela is the fortress that keeps the family looking normal, and fortresses are not built for joy. They're built for protection. Adriana's tragedy starts with something simple. She wants the glamorous version. She wants the life to feel like a story where the bad parts stay off screen. She wants the nightclub lights, the attention, the feeling that she's close to power without being consumed by it. She wants to be seen. She wants to be chosen. She wants to be loved by a man she believes is on his way to becoming someone important. Adriana isn't a boss's wife with decades of practice at denial. She's younger, more exposed, more emotionally dependent on the man she's tied to. Her role in the Mafia ecosystem is less formal, but it's still real. She's a status symbol for Christopher, and she's a bridge between the crime world and the civilian world. She's part of the image. She's the pretty, loyal partner who stands next to him and makes him look like he's rising. And because that's her role, she invests in it. The clothes, the hair, the vibe, the confidence she tries to project. Adriana wants to look like someone who belongs. Not like a scared kid who got pulled into something too big. She wants to look like she's built for it. But the key difference between Adriana and Carmela is that Carmela built walls. Adriana built dreams. She imagines a future where Christopher becomes a legitimate success, where the violence fades into the background, where she gets to keep the status without the danger. She wants the transformation story, the climb, the redemption arc. And this is where Adriana's level of knowledge becomes heartbreaking. At first she knows in the vague way most people know when they date a connected guy. She knows Christopher isn't something shady. She knows the money isn't clean. She knows there are scary people around. She knows there are rules she's not supposed to question. But she's not fully facing what it means, because facing it would force a decision, so she doesn't face it. She tries to live in the fantasy. She tries to focus on the parts that feel exciting and stylish and adult. The club becomes her version of control. It's her space, her identity. If she can run something, if she can be competent, if she can build a real thing, then she's not just someone's girlfriend. She's not just an accessory. She's a person with a job, a purpose, a life. But the Mafia doesn't give women real ownership. It gives them borrowed power. Power that exists only as long as the men allow it. Adriana's image, the one she wants the world to see, is the cool, successful, plugged-in woman. The one with taste. The one who's fun, loyal, and part of the scene. She wants to be admired, but also safe. She wants attention, but not suspicion. And she wants love. That's the fatal part. Because Adriana's emotional loyalty to Christopher is the lever that the world uses against her from every angle. The mob uses it because she'll tolerate things to keep him. The FBI uses it because they know she won't easily detach. Christopher uses it because he expects forgiveness and patience as part of the deal. So how informed is Adriana? Her arc is basically the story of forced awareness. She starts with soft knowledge, the kind that can be ignored. Then the pressure comes, and suddenly she's looking at the truth directly. And once you look directly, you can't go back to soft focus. You can't unsee what you've seen. This is the difference between being adjacent to the life and being dragged into the machinery. Adriana becomes a person who knows too much and has too little protection. Carmela has status. Carmela has the shield of being the boss's wife. People are careful with Carmela because she matters in the internal politics. Adriana doesn't get that. Adriana is loved by some, tolerated by many, and ultimately seen as disposable by the system. That's why her position is so dangerous. She's close enough to hear things, close enough to be useful, but not powerful enough to be untouchable. And when she tries to choose a path, every path is blocked. If she stays loyal to Christopher and the mob world, she's living under pressure, fear, and increasing exposure. If she tries to cooperate with law enforcement, she's stepping into a game she doesn't understand, run by people who talk like they care but ultimately see her as a tool. If she tries to run away, she has to admit her whole identity was built on a lie and abandon everything she knows. Adriana chose this life initially because it looked like a shortcut to adulthood, to status, to security, to love. She wanted to believe Christopher's violence was just part of his background, not his core. She wanted to believe she could hold on to the glamorous shell without paying for what's inside. But how happy does she seem with her decision? Adriana's happiness is the kind that exists in flashes. A good night out, a moment of pride, a moment where Christopher is gentle, a moment where the club feels like it's hers. But overall, Adriana becomes a person living with constant dread. Her body reacts before her mind even has time to rationalize it. Stress shows up as illness, as panic, as desperation. The more she understands, the less she can breathe. And the cruelest part is that Adriana keeps trying to make the dream real even when the dream is already dead. She keeps hoping love will be enough to change the story. She keeps thinking if she chooses correctly, if she explains it right, if she proves her loyalty enough, she can survive. That's not how their world works. Their world doesn't reward loyalty with safety, it rewards loyalty with more demands. Adriana's role was never to be fully protected. It was to be a supportive extension of Christopher's life, a pretty piece of stability. Someone who makes him feel like a normal man while he does abnormal things. And the moment she stops fitting that role, the moment she becomes complicated, scared, legally risky, emotionally unpredictable, she becomes a problem to solve. That's why her story feels like watching someone walk toward a door that isn't there. She's trying to exit a building that has no exits. Carmela survives because she accepts the building and learns which rooms are safest. Adriana dies because she believes escape is possible if she just finds the right hallway. Adriana is the mob wife who wanted the movie version. The show makes her pay for that desire in the most brutal way. Rosalie April is what Carmela could become if you strip away the illusion that stability lasts. She's the reminder that this life does not give guarantees. It gives temporary comfort, and then it takes it back with interest. Rosalie's role as Jackie April Sir's wife places her in a different emotional category. She isn't just married to a mob guy, she's married to a man who held the top seat. That comes with status, but it also comes with exposure. People watched Jackie, people judged Jackie, people feared Jackie, and Rosalie lived inside that spotlight. So when Jackie dies, Rosalie becomes something very specific in the mob ecosystem. She becomes a living memory. She becomes a symbol of what it costs. And she becomes a test of how the community treats its own, because how they treat the widow is part of the performance too. They have to show loyalty. They have to show respect. They have to make it seem like family means something, at least on the surface. Rosalie's knowledge is not soft, it's hard-earned. She has been around long enough to understand the rhythms. She knows what a good year means and what a bad year means. She knows when a conversation is really about business. She knows how danger moves through the social circle. She knows which men are stable and which men are reckless. She knows what happens when someone falls out of favor. And she knows, probably better than Carmela in some ways, that you can do everything right and still lose. That's what widowhood means in this world. It means you played the game faithfully and the game still took your husband. So why does Rosalie stay connected? Partly because she has no choice. This world is her community, her friends, her support structure, her familiar language. Leaving isn't just walking away from danger, it's walking away from everything that makes her life coherent. But it's also because Rosalie understands the trade more honestly than the others. Rosalie doesn't seem to cling to moral purity the way Carmela does. Carmela wants to feel clean while staying inside. Rosalie doesn't waste as much energy pretending. She knows what these men are. She knows what the money is. She knows the rules are brutal. And she's made a kind of peace with that, not because she loves it, but because denial is exhausting. Rosalie's image is also different. Carmela wants to project respectability, church-approved class, the polished mask of suburbia. Adriana wants to project glamour, youth, fun, the nightclub life. Rosalie projects toughness, not in a loud way, but in a way that says she's been through things and she's still standing. She's the woman who can sit at a table with other wives and not flinch when the conversation gets dark. She can laugh, she can gossip, she can mourn, she can keep going. She doesn't need the fantasy as badly because reality has already proved itself to her. Her happiness is also different. It's less ambitious. Rosalie doesn't seem like someone chasing a brand new dream. She seems like someone trying to preserve pieces of herself, to find moments of pleasure where she can, to enjoy friendship, travel, romance, distractions, anything that makes the days feel less heavy. And then you get to her deepest tragedy, Jackie Jr., because Rosalie's relationship to the life isn't only about what it gave her, it's about what it took from her son. Rosalie knows, like all the wives know, that the men's world has a gravitational pull. It drags the boys toward it. It makes crime look like inheritance. It makes violence look like masculinity. It makes shortcuts look like destiny. And Rosalie, despite everything she knows, can't stop it. That is the most painful truth about the mob wife role. You can control the house, the meals, the holidays, the image, the social network. But you cannot fully control the culture your child breathes every day. You cannot fully compete with the allure of power, money, fear-based respect. So when Jackie Jr. goes down the path he goes down, Rosalie isn't just grieving a son making bad choices. She's grieving the fact that her entire environment shaped those choices. She's grieving a system that tells boys they can be legends if they act stupid and violent, and she's grieving her own powerlessness. Rosalie, more than Carmela and Adriana, represents the long-term cost of staying in this world. Carmela is still in the phase where she can pretend stability might last. Adriana is in the phase where she thinks love can save her. Rosalie is what's left when time proves both of those ideas wrong, so how happy does she seem with her decision? Rosalie seems like someone who has learned to be functional rather than happy. She takes what joy she can get, she values connection, she laughs when she can, but there's a baseline sadness to her life that never fully lifts, because she has lived long enough to see what the life really does to families. In a way, Rosalie is the clearest-eyed, and that clearness is a kind of mourning that never ends. If you zoom out, you can see the wives aren't just side characters orbiting the men, they are part of the machinery. They do 4 major things, over and over. First, they legitimize, not legally, not officially, but socially. They create the impression of normalcy. They make the family look like a family, not a crew. They allow the men to move through civilian spaces without looking like predators. They connect the mob world to schools, churches, charities, neighborhoods. That matters because organized crime thrives when it blends in. Second, they stabilize the men emotionally. This is the part the men rarely admit. They come home from a life built on paranoia and violence, and they want to feel human again. They want food, routine, familiar voices, children in the hallway, television on, normal problems. The wives provide that emotional reset. Not always happily, not always successfully, but it's part of the deal. Third, they carry the moral weight the men refuse to carry. The men externalize guilt. They call things necessary. They call things business. They push emotion away because emotion makes them weak. The wives, especially Carmela, often hold the emotional consequences. They feel the shame, they feel the fear, they feel the disgust, they feel the anxiety about the children. They translate the violence into emotional reality, even if they don't speak it out loud. And fourth, they enforce silence, not with threats like the men do, but with culture, with social pressure, with the unwritten rules of what you discuss and what you never say, with the tight circle of wives who understand that survival depends on not breaking the illusion. That's why the mob wife role is so intense. It's not simply being married to a criminal. It's being part of a system where your comfort depends on your ability to live with contradiction. And each of these 3 women handles contradiction differently. Carmela tries to moralize it, manage it, bargain with it. Adriana tries to beautify it, romance it, pretend it will evolve into something safer. Rosalie tries to endure it, accept it, survive it without illusions. If you rank them by awareness, Rosalie is the most hardened, Carmela is the most strategic, and Adriana is the most emotionally vulnerable. Rosalie understands the full ecosystem. She may not know every detail, but she understands the logic. She knows how decisions get made and what consequences look like. She knows which smiles are fake and which condolences are just protocol. Carmela understands enough to navigate. She senses danger. She reads moods. She understands the social politics. She knows the money's dirty. She doesn't need a confession because the lifestyle itself is the confession. Adriana understands in pieces. At first she understands the aesthetic, the vibe, the rewards. Later she is forced to understand the mechanics, and that knowledge crushes her because she doesn't have the psychological armor the others built over years. The point isn't that any of them are clueless. The point is that knowing is not the same as being able to act on what you know, because action has costs, and the Mafia world is designed so that the women pay those costs more quietly. Carmela chooses it because it gives her status, comfort, security, and a role she is genuinely skilled at. She also chooses it because leaving would mean admitting her whole life was built on something rotten, and that's a level of loss that would collapse her identity. She fights Tony, she resents Tony, she tries to carve out legitimacy, but she keeps circling back because the world outside is uncertain and the world inside is familiar. Adriana chooses it because she wants love, and she wants the fantasy of upward mobility. She wants to believe Christopher's worst side isn't permanent. She wants the story where the rough guy becomes a real partner and they build a future. She doesn't understand at first that the violence isn't a phase, it's the foundation. Rosalie chose it originally because it was her marriage, her community, her social identity. But after Jackie's death, staying is less about choosing and more about existing inside what's left. In a way, Rosalie's choice has already been made by time. She is a product of the life as much as she is a participant in it. Carmela is the most conflicted. She has moments of pride and comfort, but her happiness is constantly interrupted by moral nausea. She's the wife who wants to be respected by society and by God while living off a system that violates both. She is never fully at peace, and that lack of peace shows you she still has a conscience. But the conscience doesn't control her decisions, it just haunts them. Adriana is the most tragic because her happiness collapses as her awareness grows. She starts out chasing a glamorous identity, but the deeper she gets, the more her body and mind break under pressure. Her decision to be with Christopher becomes less like a choice and more like a chain she can't remove. She seems happy when she can pretend. She seems terrified when she can't. Rosalie is the most resigned. She finds joy in moments, but she carries grief like a permanent layer. She seems less interested in proving anything to the world and more interested in surviving the emotional damage. If Carmela is a fortress and Adriana is a dream, Rosalie is a scar, a sign that healing happened, but the wound was real. The Sopranos doesn't present these women as simple victims, and it doesn't present them as pure villains. It presents them as human beings adapting to a toxic environment, each in their own way. And the most important thing it shows is this: the mob wife is not someone who doesn't know. The mob wife is someone who knows enough, and then chooses what version of reality she can live with. Carmela chooses the version where she can call herself a good mother and a good person, even while benefiting from evil, because admitting the full truth would destroy her. Adriana chooses the version where love and ambition will eventually turn danger into stability, because admitting the full truth would mean admitting she attached her life to a man who will never be safe. Rosalie chooses the version where the truth is ugly but survivable, because she has already paid prices that made denial feel pointless. And that's why the wives are so central to what The Sopranos is really about. The show isn't just about crime, it's about self-deception, about the stories people tell themselves so they can wake up in the morning and keep going. The men tell themselves they are soldiers, providers, businessmen. The wives tell themselves they are families, mothers, respectable women, survivors. And the tragedy is that all of those stories have pieces of truth inside them. That's what makes them work. That's what makes them dangerous. And that's what makes Carmela, Adriana, and Rosalie feel so real. They aren't blind. They're negotiating with reality every day, trying to keep something like a self intact while living next to a world that constantly demands they trade pieces of that self away. Because in the Mafia, nobody just gets paid in money. Everybody pays in the soul, one quiet compromise at a time.